If I ask you to play the chords G, C, and D, or in other words, a 1-4-5 progression in the key of G, most of you would probably have no problem with this and grab the standard open G, C, and D chords. What if I asked you to play these same chords somewhere else on the fretboard? For those familiar with bar chords, you might play the progression like this. Or even like this. Now what if I asked you to do this again? Or even once more? Or for that matter, one more time? If at this stage you're left scratching your head, watch the rest of this video to learn a very simple method for playing any chord progression in any position on the fretboard, and more importantly, without ever having to shift your hand position. Here is how it works. After playing the obvious G, C, and D progression with open chords, look for the nearest root note of the first chord. In this case, we're looking for a G. This can be found on the E string, 3rd fret. When the chord's root is located on this string, you only have two choices, either an E form chord or a G form chord. We will choose the E form chord as we've already used the G form chord in the first example using only open chords. Now that we have a G chord using an E form shape, we need to look for the nearest C note, the root note of the next chord in the progression, on either the guitar's E, A, or D strings within a 4 fret area of the fretboard. Let's call this the 4 fret zone. You will find that there is only ever one option. In this case, the C note is located on the A string, 3rd fret. When the root note is located on the A string, you only have two choices, an A form chord or a C form chord. We'll pick the A form chord because this chord falls within the 4 fret zone and we're trying to play every chord in the progression without shifting our hand position. To find the last chord in the progression, D, we need to find the nearest D root note on either the E, A, or D strings and within the 4 fret zone. Once again, you will find only one available within this area, and since this root note is on the A string, we can choose between a C form chord or an A form chord. Since we're trying to stay in a boxed position, the only choice is the C form chord. Put these together and you have one more way of playing this chord progression without moving your hand position. How would we do this in the following position though? First, look for the nearest G root note on the same 3 strings, which isn't the same as the previously used G note. In this case, the G note is revealed on the 5th fret of the D string. This will be our next position's starting point and defines where the 4 fret zone begins. Whenever a root note is located on the D string, a D chord form is used. Placing this D chord form here gives us our first G chord. Next, look for a C note within the designated 4 fret zone area. This reveals a C note on the 8th fret of the E string. Whenever you have a root on the E string, you only have two options. Either an E form chord, which in this case would take us out of our 4 fret zone, or a G form chord. So let's use this shape as it falls perfectly inside the zone. It's very common to remove the notes on both the E and A strings when using this chord to make the shape much more manageable to play. And now for the D chord. Looking for a D root note within the 4 fret zone shows a D note on the A string, and as previously stated, we only have two options, either an A form chord or a C form chord. So let's choose the A form chord, and this is what it sounds like all together. Now let's continue up the neck of the guitar, this time looking for a G root note that is different from the previously used root note. This will reveal a G root note on the A string's 10th fret. Again, there are only two choices here, a C chord form or an A chord form. We'll choose the C chord form as it falls within the boundaries of the 4 fret zone. Inside this zone, we can find a C root note on the E string of the 8th fret, so once again this gives us the option of either a G form chord or an E form chord. As the E form chord fits within the 4 fret zone, we will select this shape. After this, the D root note for the last chord falls once again on the E string, giving us the same two options. However, this time we will choose the G form, which once again sounds like this. Moving up the neck once more is easy. Select the same root note as before, but select an A form shape this time. This will reveal our first G chord and the 4 fret zone. As the C root note of the next chord is located on the D string, we can only use a D form chord. As the D root note of the next chord is on an E string, we can choose between an E form shape or a G form shape. Of course, we will choose the E form shape that fits within the 4 fret zone, which altogether gives us this. You will now notice that the next G root note is located on the E string 15th fret. For this, let's choose a G form chord. When you select a G form chord as your starting position, the 4 fret zone actually ends on the root instead of it being used as the start point. Within this zone, you will see a C note here, and to keep within the designated area, we will pick a C-form shape. As the D root note is on a D string, we can use a D-form shape. You will hopefully recognize all three of these shapes, as they are the open chords used at the beginning of this video. For those of you who are not yet aware, the fretboard resets after the 12th fret, repeating everything that came before it, so you could consider the 12th fret identical to your guitar's open strings. And all of this, of course, leads right back to where we started. The next time you play any chord progression, try picking any root note on either the E, A or D strings as your starting position, and then try to play the whole progression or song in a 4-fret zone. The process of using shapes you already know and moving them around the fretboard to form new chords is referred to as the caged chord system. This method works well for other chord types beyond the major chords used in this lesson. So if you want to be able to play any chord progression in one position, including minor chords and slightly jazzier 7th voicings, then I suggest you watch this series of caged guitar lessons from the beginning. And if you're still struggling to memorize the notes of the fretboard, then watch this one. As usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.